People are focused on the content and want to be drawn in. If you ask them to subscribe immediately, they might skip or ignore it because they haven't experienced the value yet. In the early 20th century, the world was captivated by the allure of ancient Egypt, a civilization shrouded in mystery and grandeur. The deserts of Egypt had hidden countless secrets for thousands of years, and the most tantalizing among them was the tomb of the young pharaoh Tutankhamun. Known as King Tut, he had ruled Egypt during the 18th dynasty, a period of both political intrigue and cultural flourishing. Despite his relatively short reign and the youth at which he died, Tutankhamun had become the center of historical fascination, not only for his royal lineage, but also for the legends that surrounded the wealth of treasures buried with him. For centuries, archaeologists and treasure hunters scoured the Valley of the Kings in search of a tomb that had remained untouched, a tomb that would reveal secrets of the pharaohs that no one had seen for millennia. Among them was a British archaeologist named Howard Carter, a man whose dedication to Egyptology had defined his life. He had spent decades studying tombs, hieroglyphs, and ancient Egyptian culture, driven by a passion that bordered on obsession. Carter believed that somewhere in the Valley of the Kings lay the tomb of Tutankhamun, a tomb that had been overlooked by earlier explorers. The young pharaoh's resting place, he theorized, must be hidden in a secluded corner of the valley, protected from grave robbers by the sands and rocks of the desert. After years of searching, supported by Lord Carnarvon, an aristocrat with a keen interest in archaeology and a willingness to fund Carter's relentless pursuit, Carter finally found what he had been seeking. In November 1922, after meticulous digging and surveying, he unearthed a flight of steps that led to a sealed doorway. The air was thick with anticipation as Carter and his team approached the entrance, their hearts pounding with the knowledge that they were about to witness history firsthand. The door itself was remarkable, untouched for over 3,000 years, bearing inscriptions that warned of grave consequences for anyone who dared disturb the pharaoh's rest. These inscriptions, written in ancient hieroglyphs, spoke of death and misfortune, but to Carter and his team, they were primarily a historical curiosity rather than a real threat. When the doorway was finally opened, they entered a small antechamber filled with objects of daily life, statues and chests that spoke of a world long vanished. Beyond it lay the burial chamber, an opulent space that held the body of King Tutankhamun, encased in golden artifacts that glimmered even in the dim candlelight. The sheer magnificence of the tomb stunned everyone present. Gold masks, intricately carved jewelry, ceremonial weapons, and countless treasures filled every corner, testifying to the pharaoh's wealth and the reverence with which he was treated even in death. But alongside the wonder, there was an unease, a subtle sense that something otherworldly lingered in the air. The story of Tutankhamun's tomb quickly spread, capturing the imagination of the public worldwide. Newspapers published photographs of the treasures, and the idea of an ancient curse began to circulate. While many historians dismissed such notions as superstition, others could not ignore the warnings etched into the walls and the mysterious deaths that would soon follow. The discovery of the tomb represented more than just archaeological achievement. It was a bridge across time, connecting modern civilization to an ancient world of rituals, beliefs, and reverence for the dead. Carter meticulously catalogued each artifact, understanding the importance of preserving history while also revealing it to the world. The process was slow and painstaking. Every object was examined, measured, and recorded, from the grandiose sarcophagus to the smallest amulets placed in the pharaoh's wrappings. Scholars from around the world eagerly awaited reports and photographs, eager to study the contents without disturbing the tomb themselves. Despite the excitement, there was also caution. Carter understood that the tomb had been sealed for thousands of years, and the delicate balance of air, light, and exposure could affect the preservation of the relics. His methodical approach ensured that the treasures were carefully removed and protected, but the intense global attention added pressure. Public fascination with the tomb quickly morphed into sensationalism. Headlines in newspapers hinted at curses and supernatural consequences, exaggerating the warnings found on the walls, while Carter himself remained focused on the scientific and historical aspects, the notion of a Pharaoh's curse began to capture the imagination of people far beyond Egypt. The allure of ancient death, treasure, and mystery, combined with real-life events, create an enduring legend. Scholars debated the significance of the tomb, while writers and journalists embellished the story, connecting it to myths, omens, and mysterious forces. Visitors and dignitaries from across the world traveled to see the tomb, some believing in the power of the curse, others simply marveling at human history's astonishing achievements. In addition to the treasures, the tomb also revealed insights into the life of Tutankhamun himself. His mummified body, preserved with elaborate rituals, provided clues about his health, age at death, and even his physical appearance. These findings fascinated medical experts and historians alike, who used modern techniques to reconstruct the life of a pharaoh who had been largely forgotten until that moment. The discovery of King Tut's tomb was a turning point not only in archaeology but in popular culture. It fueled a fascination with Egypt that inspired books, movies, and documentaries for decades. The imagery of gold masks, jewel-encrusted coffins, and monumental tombs became iconic symbols of mystery and opulence. Yet, despite the scientific understanding of the artifacts, the sense of unease persisted. The warnings in hieroglyphs, the untimely deaths of those connected to the tomb, and the sheer magnitude of the discovery combined to create an aura of the supernatural. Visitors and historians alike felt a deep respect, even fear, for the resting place of Tutankhamun, acknowledging that this young king's tomb was more than just a collection of treasures. It was a link to a civilization that had understood death, the afterlife, and the power of legacy in ways modern society could only begin to comprehend. The story of the tomb's discovery also highlighted the interplay between human curiosity and caution. While the modern world celebrated the achievement, the ancient warnings reminded all that some secrets were protected for a reason. This tension between exploration and reverence, science and superstition, would continue to define the legend of King Tut's Curse for years to come. The unearthing of Tutankhamun's tomb was not merely an archaeological event, it was a cultural phenomenon, a moment when the past reached across millennia to touch the present. It sparked a fascination with Egyptology that continues to this day, inspiring generations to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, always aware that some secrets, once revealed, carry consequences beyond human understanding. Soon after the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb, what had begun as a triumph of archaeology began to take on a far darker and more mysterious tone. The excitement of the find was quickly overshadowed by a series of events that seemed too eerie to be merely coincidental. Lord Carnarvon, the wealthy aristocrat who had funded Howard Carter's years-long search for the tomb, became the first figure to attract global attention in this new chapter of the story. Known for his adventurous spirit and dedication to the cause of archaeology, Carnarvon had been present at the moment the tomb was finally opened, witnessing the treasures of the young pharaoh as they had lain undisturbed for more than 3,000 years. The world celebrated this historic achievement, but within a few weeks, tragedy struck. Lord Carnarvon contracted an infection after being bitten by a mosquito while in Egypt. What began as a simple bite quickly developed into a severe illness, which his doctors struggled to control with the medical knowledge of the time. Despite their efforts, he succumbed to blood poisoning and died in April 1923, just a few months after the tomb's discovery. The timing of his death, so closely following the unveiling of the tomb, was enough to spark whispers among the press and the public. Newspapers around the world ran dramatic headlines declaring that the young pharaoh had cursed those who dared disturb his eternal rest. This story, sensationalized and repeated in countless publications, fed into a collective fascination with the supernatural, creating the notion that Tutankhamun himself had somehow reached across millennia to protect his tomb from intruders. But Lord Carnarvon's death was only the beginning. Others who had been connected to the tomb or its artifacts soon began experiencing mysterious accidents, illnesses, and, in some cases, death. One of the most cited examples was that of a young English journalist who had been reporting from the site. He fell gravely ill shortly after returning from Egypt under circumstances that baffled doctors. Though no one could prove a direct link to the tomb, The story quickly became part of the growing legend surrounding Tutankhamun's curse. Even those who were experienced archaeologists and scientists began to feel an unsettling anxiety as more incidents occurred. Howard Carter himself, despite his rational mind and meticulous approach, could not ignore the strange sense of foreboding that seemed to linger in the air. The very act of entering the tomb, examining the treasures, and touching objects that had lain in darkness for millennia felt as if it were crossing an invisible boundary between the living and the dead. The fear that arose was not limited to the immediate team in Egypt. Reports of illness and misfortune associated with the tomb traveled quickly across Europe and America. Families of those involved in the expedition began to express concern, and some even forbade their loved ones from continuing their work. Letters and telegrams from worried friends and colleagues filled the offices of the archaeologists, adding a layer of social pressure to the already intense scientific and logistical challenges of studying the tomb. The supposed curse also attracted a host of sensationalist writers and journalists who thrived on mystery and fear. Newspapers described Pharaoh's wrath in dramatic detail, recounting the ancient inscriptions warning that death would befall anyone who disturbed the sacred tomb. Stories of shadowy figures, sudden chills, and unexplained accidents were added, often without verification, turning the scientific discovery into a global legend. In this environment, every minor illness or mishap was attributed to the curse. One worker who had helped move a heavy sarcophagus reportedly slipped and fell, suffering a broken bone, and this too was woven into the narrative of Tutankhamun's vengeance from beyond the grave. Visitors and dignitaries who came to see the tomb or the artifacts in Cairo and London were warned repeatedly about the curse, whether in jest or with serious concern, further fueling the myth. Even as the deaths and accidents piled up, the scientific community tried to offer rational explanations. Some suggested that bacteria, fungi, or moldering spores in the sealed tomb might have caused infections. Others speculated about stress, fatigue, and the harsh conditions of the Egyptian desert as contributing factors to the health issues of those involved. Despite these logical interpretations, the legend of the curse persisted, partly because the deaths were indeed unusual and often sudden, and partly because humans are naturally drawn to mystery and fear. The tale of the curse was further complicated by the sheer number of people involved in the expedition, from engineers and laborers to scholars and journalists. Anyone who had entered the tomb or even touched objects connected to King Tut became part of the growing web of speculation. Some individuals lived long lives, apparently untouched by any supernatural force, while others experienced misfortune that seemed inexplicably linked to the tomb. This mixture of coincidence and tragedy created fertile ground for the legend to grow. Beyond physical ailments and sudden deaths, there were also reports of psychological effects. People who had been inside the tomb spoke of a sense of unease, chills, or a heavy weight on their shoulders as if unseen eyes were watching. Even Howard Carter, who spent countless hours documenting the artifacts, noted a strange atmosphere in the burial chamber. Though he remained committed to science and careful observation, he could not deny that the tomb exuded an aura unlike any other archaeological site he had encountered. The public's fascination with the curse extended into popular culture. Artists, writers, and filmmakers began to imagine what it would be like to awaken the wrath of an ancient pharaoh. Tales of pharaohs' spirits wandering tears, guarding their tombs, or punishing intruders became common motifs in literature and entertainment. Museums and exhibitions that displayed artifacts from the tomb often included warnings or references to the curse, playing on the public's appetite for mystery and danger. In addition, the mysterious deaths had real social consequences. Families and sponsors became wary of funding future expeditions, fearing that involvement with ancient tombs might invite misfortune. Governments and officials debated whether archaeological sites should be opened at all and whether the risks were worth the rewards. The combination of superstition, media sensationalism, and genuine health hazards created a perfect storm, allowing the legend of Tutankhamun's curse to flourish. Scholars who tried to debunk the myth often found themselves fighting not just facts, but a story that had already captured the imagination of millions. Even today, nearly a century later, the deaths that followed the opening of the tomb are cited as evidence of supernatural forces, while modern science continues to offer natural explanations. This interplay between myth and reality is what has made the story of Tutankhamun's curse so enduring. What began as a single tragic death, the untimely passing of Lord Carnarvon, had evolved into a global narrative that combined history, mystery, and fear. The tomb, once a silent resting place for a young pharaoh, became a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that some secrets carry consequences far beyond human comprehension. The strange deaths associated with the discovery of King Tut's tomb not only cemented the story of a curse in popular imagination, but also highlighted the fragility of life and the allure of mystery in human culture. Even today, the tale continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and a healthy respect for the past, reminding us that history is never just about what is visible, but also about the unseen forces that shape our understanding of the world. The narrative of these deaths serves as a bridge between the rational and the mystical, illustrating how human perception, coincidence, and storytelling can combine to create a legend that lasts through generations, captivating the hearts and minds of those who dare to explore the unknown. As the story of King Tutankhamun's tomb and the mysterious deaths surrounding it spread across the globe, the legend of the Pharaoh's Curse began to grow far beyond the borders of Egypt. What had started as a tragic and eerie coincidence now took on the aura of a worldwide phenomenon. Newspapers in London, New York, Paris, and Cairo sensationalized every new incident, turning them into headlines that captured the imagination of millions. Journalists wrote of the pharaoh's wrath, of unseen forces guarding treasures that had slept for millennia, and of the terrible consequences that befell anyone who dared disturb the young king's eternal rest. With each article, the legend grew larger, more menacing, and impossible to ignore. The deaths of those directly connected to the excavation, like Lord Carnarvon, were only the beginning. Soon, stories emerged of explorers, archaeologists, and even reporters who had visited the tomb or handled artifacts who fell victim to accidents, sudden illnesses, or mysterious misfortunes. One man fell from a horse while traveling in Egypt, suffering serious injuries that would affect his health for the rest of his life. Another developed a severe infection after returning home from Cairo. Though these events could be explained by coincidence, the timing and context made them perfect fodder for the spreading narrative of a supernatural curse. Writers and storytellers capitalized on the fear and fascination surrounding the tomb, turning historical events into thrilling tales that blurred the line between fact and fiction. Books were published recounting the supposed curse, often embellishing the events for dramatic effect. Magazines carried vivid illustrations of Pharaoh Tutankhamun's golden mask, surrounded by ghostly figures, shadows, and mysterious energies. Cinema too began to draw inspiration from the events, creating stories where explorers vanished, treasures were guarded by spirits, and ancient curses struck down those who dared to enter forbidden tombs. The legend of the curse was reinforced by reports from locals in Egypt, some of whom claimed to feel a presence or hear strange noises when near the tomb. Villagers told tales of the pharaoh's spirit, angered by the intrusion of outsiders into sacred ground. While these stories were dismissed by many scholars as folklore or superstition, the public was captivated by them. Every news story, whether true or exaggerated, fed the growing sense that King Tutankhamun's tomb was more than just an archaeological site. It was a place of power, danger, and mystery. The phenomenon was not confined to Egypt. Across Europe and North America, social circles, clubs, and academic institutions discussed the events surrounding Tutankhamun's tomb. People speculated endlessly about the nature of the curse, its origin, and its consequences. Was it a supernatural punishment placed by the pharaoh himself, a defense mechanism crafted by ancient priests, or simply a coincidence magnified by fear and imagination? These questions fascinated both scientists and the general public alike. Scientists tried to offer rational explanations, emphasizing that most deaths and illnesses could be attributed to natural causes. Bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms lurking in the tomb were identified as potential sources of infection. Dust and mold present in the sealed chambers could have triggered respiratory problems, allergic reactions, and even life-threatening illnesses. Stress, fatigue, and the harsh desert conditions were also cited as contributing factors. Yet, despite these logical explanations, the allure of the curse could not be dismissed. The human mind, drawn to mystery and pattern, naturally connected unrelated events to form a story. The coincidences became meaningful, and the deaths, though often explainable, were interpreted as proof that disturbing the pharaoh's rest carried supernatural consequences. The curse also began to affect the behavior of those involved in archaeology. Future expeditions approached tombs with increased caution, some even fearing the wrath of ancient spirits. Scholars debated whether it was ethical to disturb burial sites at all, considering the potential spiritual and psychological consequences. Museums displaying artifacts from the tomb included warnings, either tongue-in-cheek or serious, about the curse, adding to the drama and intrigue surrounding the collection. Among those most affected was Howard Carter himself. Although a man of science and logic, he could not ignore the persistent unease that seemed to cling to the tomb. He had spent countless hours cataloging artifacts, documenting their placement, and handling objects that had lain untouched for centuries. Each step inside the burial chamber brought with it a mix of awe, fear, and a profound sense of history. Carter would later recount that the tomb seemed alive in a strange way, as if the very air within it carried the weight of millennia and the presence of those who had once worshipped and served the pharaoh. The legend of the curse reached its peak as more stories emerged of distant relatives, assistants, and even journalists who suffered misfortune after coming into contact with items connected to Tutankhamun. Deaths, illnesses, and accidents that were statistically unremarkable were portrayed as evidence of the curse. The public's fascination turned into obsession, with people eager to hear the latest tale of supernatural retribution. The legend was further fueled by inconsistencies, exaggerations, and errors in reporting. Newspapers competed to publish the most dramatic accounts, often embellishing events to attract readership. Rumors were presented as facts, and speculation became part of the historical narrative. The effect was powerful. The curse, once a minor concern, now dominated global imagination. Beyond newspapers and books, the curse influenced other forms of media. Radio shows, lectures, and exhibitions featured tales of Tutankhamun's wrath. Artists and illustrators depicted the pharaoh's ghost, mysterious shadows, and glowing hieroglyphs, creating images that would forever shape the public perception of ancient Egypt. Even fashion and cultural trends were influenced, with Egyptian motifs becoming popular in Art Deco designs, partly inspired by the fascination with the tomb and its supposed curse. Interestingly, the growth of the legend also created a new type of celebrity. Howard Carter became a figure of intrigue, not only for his archaeological achievements, but also for his proximity to danger and the supernatural. Lord Carnarvon's tragic death elevated him to almost mythical status, while journalists, authors, and artists contributed to a global narrative that intertwined history with suspense and fear. Despite the superstition, scientific inquiry continued. Scholars analyzed the tomb, the artifacts, and the mummified remains of Tutankhamun, seeking to understand the past without being swayed by legend. Modern techniques revealed clues about the pharaoh's health, injuries, and even genetic traits, painting a picture of a young ruler whose life had been full of challenges and who had died under uncertain circumstances. These discoveries, while grounded in science, only add depth to the legend. They reminded people that the pharaoh was once alive, human and vulnerable, yet even in death, he seemed to wield power over the living. The interplay between fact and myth, science and superstition, reality and storytelling became the defining characteristic of the curse's narrative. It was a phenomenon that illustrated the human tendency to seek meaning in tragedy, to connect events into patterns, and to imagine forces beyond comprehension. The story of Tutankhamun's curse, as it grew, highlighted how history and legend can blend seamlessly, creating narratives that are both informative and enthralling. Today, nearly a century after the tomb's discovery, The legend of the curse continues to captivate audiences. Books, documentaries, films, and museum exhibitions revisit the tale, often emphasizing the eerie coincidences and the tragic fates of those connected to the tomb. The phrase Pharaoh's Curse has become a cultural shorthand for mysterious misfortune, an enduring symbol of ancient power reaching across time. The curse's growth from a few mysterious deaths to a global legend is a testament to human imagination, storytelling, and fascination with the unknown. While science can explain much, the legend endures because it taps into something deeper, the idea that some mysteries of the past are too powerful, too sacred, or too unknowable to be disturbed without consequence. The pharaoh's tomb, once a silent resting place, became a symbol of history, power, and the delicate balance between the living and the dead. The legend of the curse reminds us that the past is never truly gone, that echoes of history can reach into the present, shaping our fears, our stories, and our understanding of the world. It is this blend of truth, coincidence, and imagination that has allowed the story of King Tutankhamun's curse to grow from a few isolated events into a global cultural phenomenon, inspiring awe, curiosity, and caution in equal measure. As decades passed after the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb, the fascination with the young pharaoh and his supposed curse did not fade. Instead, it evolved, taking on new dimensions as modern science and technology began to examine the mysteries of the tomb with greater precision. Historians, archaeologists, and medical researchers sought to understand both the life and death of Tutankhamun, as well as the strange incidents that had given rise to stories of the so-called curse. With each investigation, new layers of knowledge were uncovered, but the aura of mystery remained, blending fact and legend in a way that continued to captivate the public imagination. Modern researchers approach the tomb with a mixture of caution and curiosity, unlike the early 20th century, when Howard Carter and his team had entered the chambers with relatively limited scientific equipment. Later investigators had access to advanced tools such as high-resolution imaging, chemical analysis, and forensic examination. These technologies allowed scholars to study the tomb, the artifacts, and even the mummified remains of Tutankhamun without physically disturbing them, reducing the risk of damage while providing unprecedented insight into the past. One of the most striking discoveries of these modern investigations was the identification of various microorganisms that had survived in the sealed tomb for millennia. Traces of mold, bacteria, and fungal spores were found on surfaces, wrappings, and even within the soil surrounding the tomb. Some of these microorganisms were highly toxic and could cause severe infections if inhaled or ingested. Scientists proposed that these ancient pathogens might explain the mysterious illnesses and deaths of individuals who had been present during the tomb's initial excavation. Exposure to such microorganisms, combined with stress, fatigue, and harsh desert conditions, could have created the illusion of a supernatural curse. Medical studies also provided insights into the lives and deaths of the people connected to the tomb. By examining historical records, letters, and diaries, researchers pieced together timelines of illness and accident, seeking correlations that could explain the events logically. In many cases, the supposed curse coincided with natural causes, from infections and accident as to the general hazards of working in a remote and challenging environment. Yet, even as science offered explanations, the legend of the curse persisted. Human psychology, researchers noted, played a significant role in amplifying fear and superstition. The dramatic deaths and accidents were selective memories in a broader context of survival and ordinary life. Those who had escaped unharmed were often overlooked, while tragedies were emphasized and repeated in stories, solidifying the narrative of supernatural retribution. Beyond medical and microbiological studies, modern investigations also focused on the artifacts themselves. Conservation scientists examined the delicate jewelry, statues, and funerary items using non-invasive techniques such as X-ray fluorescence, infrared imaging, and 3D scanning. These studies revealed hidden inscriptions, repairs, and even traces of ancient pigments that had faded over time. Each discovery deepened the understanding of Tutankhamun's reign, the religious beliefs of the period, and the care with which the pharaoh's burial was prepared. These investigations, while rooted in science, also enhanced the story of the curse. Every artifact, every intricate detail served as a reminder that this young king had been treated with the utmost reverence in life and death. The treasures were not merely ornamental, they were believed to carry spiritual significance, protecting the pharaoh in the afterlife. To the imagination, it was not a large leap to think that such objects might carry residual power, capable of affecting those who disturb them. Anthropologists and historians also examined the social and political context of Tutankhamun's era. His reign occurred during a time of religious upheaval and power struggles, including the restoration of traditional Egyptian deities after a period of monotheistic worship. The young pharaoh's death at around 18 years old was surrounded by mystery, leading scholars to speculate on causes ranging from genetic disorders to injury. Understanding this context provided clues about why his burial had been so elaborate and why the tomb might have been considered sacred and inviolable. Furthermore, advances in DNA analysis allowed researchers to trace Tutankhamun's family lineage, uncovering instances of inbreeding and hereditary conditions that may have contributed to his early death. These findings helped explain historical mysteries without invoking supernatural explanations, yet they also enhanced the narrative. The young king had faced immense challenges in life, and even in death, he seemed to wield a mysterious power that fascinated and terrified. Modern technology also enabled virtual reconstructions of the tomb. Digital models allowed scholars, students, and the public to explore the burial chambers in detail without physically entering them. These reconstructions revealed the precise placement of artifacts, the intricate wall paintings, and the spatial organization of the tomb, highlighting the meticulous care taken by the ancient Egyptians. Such virtual explorations made it possible to appreciate the tomb's majesty while maintaining safety, reducing the risk of exposure to harmful microorganisms. The investigations extended beyond Egypt as well. Museums around the world that had obtained artifacts from Tutankhamun's tomb collaborated with scientists to study the Analytical techniques revealed chemical compositions of metals, gemstones, and pigments, shedding light on ancient manufacturing techniques and trade routes. Conservators identified the types of wood, resins, and cloth used in burial items, offering insights into religious practices and beliefs about the afterlife. Each scientific revelation, though grounded in logic and empirical study, reinforced the notion that Tutankhamun's tomb was no ordinary resting place. It was a carefully constructed, sacred environment designed to honor a young pharaoh and safeguard his journey into eternity. In addition to physical and scientific investigations, psychological studies examined the cultural impact of the curse. Researchers explored how media coverage, public imagination, and collective storytelling shaped perceptions of danger and mystery. The notion of a curse, though not scientifically substantiated, became a lens through which people interpreted coincidences, accidents, and tragedies. It provided meaning to otherwise random events, demonstrating the power of narrative in shaping belief systems. The legend of the curse also inspired renewed interest in Egyptology and archaeology, drawing students and enthusiasts into the study of ancient civilizations. People were motivated not only by curiosity about Tutankhamun himself, but by the broader mysteries of ancient Egypt, from the construction of pyramids to the intricacies of religious rituals. In this way, the curse, whether real or imagined, had a profound and positive effect on the preservation and study of history. Modern investigations further explored the environmental conditions within the tomb. Researchers monitored temperature, humidity, and air quality, learning how the sealed environment had preserved organic materials for millennia. They discovered that fluctuations in air circulation when the tomb was opened could release spores and dust that posed health risks, explaining some of the illnesses experienced by early explorers. This scientific understanding demystified aspects of the legend, showing that natural factors could account for many of the reported misfortunes. Yet, despite these explanations, the aura of mystery never fully dissipated. The image of the young pharaoh surrounded by golden treasures and shrouded in secrecy remained potent. The curse as a story had taken on a life of its own, independent of scientific findings. It existed in literature, film, and popular culture, continuing to inspire fascination and fear. Scholars concluded that while the curse could largely be explained by science and coincidence, its endurance lay in the human imagination. It symbolized the connection between the past and the present, the visible and the invisible, the known and the unknowable. Tutankhamun's tomb, meticulously studied and preserved, remained a bridge to a world long gone, a world where life, death, and spirituality were intertwined in ways modern society could only begin to understand. Modern investigations, therefore, served dual purposes. On one hand, they provided clarity, reducing the mystery through scientific discovery and empirical analysis. On the other, they enhanced the legend, showing that history itself could be compelling, terrifying, and awe-inspiring. Each artifact, each medical study, and each digital reconstruction added depth to the story, reminding the world that Tutankhamun's life and death were extraordinary, that his tomb was sacred, and that even after thousands of years, the young pharaoh continued to capture the imagination of humanity. The curse, whether real or symbolic, had become an enduring metaphor for the power of history, the weight of human curiosity, and the intricate interplay between fact and myth. In the end, modern investigations did not eliminate the legend. They enriched it, demonstrating that understanding and mystery can coexist, and that the story of King Tutankhamun's tomb, with all its science, tragedy, and intrigue, would remain one of the most compelling narratives in history. Even after nearly a century had passed since the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb, the story of the young pharaoh and the mysterious events surrounding his final resting place continued to captivate the world. The legacy of what came to be called the Pharaoh's Curse was not limited to tales of misfortune or eerie coincidences. It became a symbol, a bridge between history, mythology, and the human imagination. The legend endured because it combined elements that are universally compelling: wealth beyond comprehension, death at a young age, a society shrouded in ritual and mystery, and the possibility of unseen forces influencing the lives of the living. Tutankhamun himself, who had been a relatively minor pharaoh during his own lifetime, was elevated to an almost mythical status. Through the lens of his tomb's discovery, he became a figure who symbolized the extraordinary achievements and enduring mysteries of ancient Egypt. Museums around the world continue to feature artifacts from his tomb, showcasing golden masks, jewel-encrusted coffins, ceremonial weapons, and exquisite jewelry. Each piece tells a story of craftsmanship, religious belief, and the extraordinary lengths to which a civilization would go to honor its dead. Yet the legend of the curse enhances the public's fascination, giving the artifacts an aura of danger, reverence, and intrigue that mere historical context alone could not provide. Literature, film, and television have kept the narrative alive, each medium adding its own interpretation. Books recounting the mysterious deaths associated with the tomb continue to be published, blending historical fact with imaginative storytelling. Hollywood has drawn inspiration from the story countless times, creating movies where archaeologists face supernatural forces, ancient curses wreak havoc, and treasure hunters are tested by unseen powers. Documentaries explore the scientific explanations behind the legend, yet they also highlight the dramatic and eerie coincidences that make the story irresistible. The legend has influenced cultural perceptions of ancient Egypt itself. Images of golden death masks, sprawling tombs, and sacred rituals have become synonymous with the civilization's wealth, power, and mystique. Egyptology, as a field of study, owes much of its popularity to the sensational impact of Tutankhamun's tomb. Students and enthusiasts from around the world are drawn to the subject, not only for its historical significance, but also for the thrill and drama associated with curses, lost treasures, and the lives of ancient rulers. The curse, in particular, serves as a cautionary tale about human curiosity, the limits of knowledge, and the respect owed to the past. It reminds us that while science can uncover many secrets, there are elements of history that remain untouchable, preserved by time, culture, and the human imagination. Modern exhibitions continue to capitalize on the story of the curse, attracting millions of visitors. Special tours, displays, and interactive experiences recreate the tomb and its treasures, often highlighting the legend of misfortune and mysterious deaths alongside factual information. By blending entertainment with education, curators ensure that visitors engage not only with the material artifacts, but also with the narrative, the drama, and the suspense that have kept Tutankhamun's story alive for generations. Beyond its influence on popular culture, the legend of the curse also shaped scholarly and archaeological practice. Researchers learned to approach ancient tombs with caution, respect, and scientific rigor, awareness of potential health hazards, the agility of artifacts, and the importance of preserving historical sites became central to modern archaeology. The story of Tutankhamun's curse, therefore, had a practical legacy as well, influencing methodology, ethics, and the way historical discoveries are handled around the world. The human fascination with the curse also highlights our psychological need for narrative. People are drawn to stories that explain, dramatize, and humanize the unknown. The mysterious deaths, accidents, and coincidences associated with the tomb provided fertile ground for storytelling, ensuring that the legend would endure even as scientific explanations clarified many of the natural causes. The narrative of Tutankhamun's curse shows how myth and reality can coexist, each enriching the other. Historians emphasize that while the curse may not have been a literal force, it served as a cultural symbol, reflecting humanity's eternal fascination with death, the afterlife, and the power of history to influence the present. Moreover, the curse illustrates the interplay between superstition and rationality. While medical science, environmental studies, and archaeological research can account for many of the misfortunes that befell those connected to the tomb, the legend endures because it appeals to imagination, emotion, and the human love of mystery. It provides a narrative framework that makes the past more vivid, the stakes higher, and the story unforgettable. The legend also raises important questions about the ethics of archaeology and the treatment of ancient sites. Should the resting places of the dead, particularly those of historically significant figures, be disturbed in the pursuit of knowledge? The story of Tutankhamun's tomb reminds us that there are cultural, spiritual, and ethical dimensions to excavation that extend beyond simple scientific curiosity. It encourages archaeologists and historians to balance the pursuit of knowledge with respect for the beliefs and practices of those who came before. In addition, the curse has a broader cultural significance. It is referenced in idioms, literature, and educational materials, symbolizing unforeseen consequences, the limits of human control, and the intersection of the natural and the supernatural. Phrases like Pharaoh's Curse or Tutankhamun's Curse evoke mystery, danger, and the idea that some forces, whether literal or metaphorical, lie beyond human understanding. The story also serves as a lens through which we can view human responses to mortality and the unknown. By projecting fear, wonder, and reverence onto the tomb and its artifacts, people engage with questions about life, death, and the afterlife in a way that transcends time and culture. Tutankhamun's curse has inspired artistic expression across generations. Painters, sculptors, filmmakers, writers, and photographers have drawn on the legend, creating works that explore the interplay between history and imagination. In doing so, they perpetuate the cultural significance of the story, ensuring that it continues to resonate with audiences who are fascinated by both the marvels of ancient Egypt and the thrill of supernatural mystery. Furthermore, the legacy of the curse extends into modern tourism. Millions of people travel to Egypt and to museums around the world to see Tutankhamun's treasures, often drawn by the allure of the curse itself. Exhibitions emphasize the dramatic history, the supposed supernatural consequences, and the incredible artistry of the pharaoh's burial. The combination of education, spectacle, and storytelling ensures that Tutankhamun remains one of the most recognized and captivating figures in ancient history. The curse also plays a role in ongoing research and discovery. Scholars continue to study the tomb, its contents, and the life of Tutankhamun, motivated in part by the intrigue surrounding the legend. Each new finding, from DNA analysis to chemical studies of artifacts, adds depth to our understanding of the past while keeping the story alive in public consciousness. In this way, the curse has not only persisted, but has become a catalyst for knowledge, curiosity, and the preservation of history. Perhaps most importantly, the legacy of Tutankhamun's curse highlights the human fascination with the intersection of mystery and reality. People are drawn to stories that challenge their understanding, that blend history with the unexplained, and that evoke emotions ranging from awe to fear. The pharaoh's tomb, once a silent resting place, now functions as a symbol of both human achievement and human imagination, reminding us that the past is not merely a series of dates and artifacts, but a living story that continues to shape culture, thought, and art. Today, educators, historians, and storytellers use the legend to engage audiences with ancient Egypt, demonstrating that learning can be both intellectually stimulating and emotionally compelling. The story of the curse teaches lessons about history, ethics, science, and human psychology, illustrating how myth and fact can coexist to create a narrative that is richer than either could be alone. In the final analysis, the legacy of King Tutankhamun's curse is more than a tale of misfortune or supernatural punishment. It is a cultural, historical, and psychological phenomenon that continues to inspire awe and curiosity. It bridges the gap between the ancient and the modern, the real and the imagined, and the scientific and the mystical. Through museums, books, films, exhibitions, and ongoing scholarship, Tutankhamun's story lives on, demonstrating that even thousands of years after his death, the young pharaoh continues to command attention, respect, and wonder. The curse, whether real or symbolic, has become a permanent part of the human story. A reminder that history is not only about what happened, but also about how we remember, interpret, and are inspired by it. Tutankhamun's tomb, with all its treasures, rituals, and legends, remains one of the most powerful symbols of human civilization, a testament to the enduring allure of mystery, the fascination with the unknown, and the capacity of a single story to shape imagination for generations. It reminds us that some stories are timeless, some mysteries are irresistible, and some legacies, like that of King Tut, will never fade. After watching or listening to an engaging story, viewers feel excited, amazed, or curious. That's when they're most likely to take action, like subscribing, liking, or commenting,